Hello all, welcome to my channel. This is Sumant, and in this video, I will explain how to integrate and run your mocha tests with Browserstack. In last video, we have seen how to run Selenium webdriverjs script in Browserstack. If you haven't watched it, I will add a link at the top, and I recommend you to watch that video first. Now, let's get started. Okay. Let me first create a new folder here and name it as mocha test. Now, I'll create a new file, mocha browserstack1.js. First, let's import WebDriver. And then let's create an driver object, not initialize anything here. Let's create the first describe, give it a title. Let me add an async function here. Let's create an init block. Just name it as Google test async function, and let's do 4 actions. Let's just focus on how to interact with the website. Let's assume that we have already opened a browser and start the code. So we will add the integration code in the before each block in a while. So driver dot get https://google.com. Let me add an await in the beginning and console.log. Let me get the title of this web page. Driver dot get title. And then let's quit. Let's keep the script simple. Now let me copy this code, create one more test. In the second test, I'll open Orange HRM website. I'll get this title. In the third test, I'll open Amazon website and I'll say Amazon.in. So we have written all these 3 tests. Now let's write our before each and after each blocks. And in before each block, we will write all the necessary code that is required to integrate this mocha test with Browserstack. Let me create a before each block. An async function. Now here, this is the place where I will initialize the driver object. Driver equals to new WebDriver dot builder. Now let's chain this builder object with using server first. And we already knew how to get this server URL. We have seen it in our last video. So this is our Browserstack URL and dot with capabilities. We will pass capabilities object to this method. Now let's create it using split operator. We are calling the capabilities. Now we didn't create this capabilities object yet. Now let me create that. So let me add that capabilities equal to this. Now we already knew how to get the capabilities. We have seen it in our last video. Oh, so let me go to this other file, copy the capabilities, paste it here. Let me do format document, and then we need to add one more. Okay, the object name is wrong. Capabilities, browser, and browser name colon capabilities of browser. We have already seen why we require all these statements in our last video. Now this is how we create the driver object. We need to call one more method, build. Now that's it. So we have created our driver object, and using that driver object in each and every test, we are opening a URL and getting the title, and finally we are closing the browser. Now let's start running our mocha test. For that, let me first open my package.json, add one more line in my scripts. So using this as I'm executing my unit test, so I can't use it anymore for executing the UI mocha test. So I will create one more test object, mocha Browserstack test colon. So this is a folder in which this mocha test is present, and I will also provide explicit timeout because in my test I didn't provide any timeout. So if we didn't provide this timeout of 60 seconds, right? After 2 seconds, my test will start failing because by default Mocha considers 2 seconds as a max time for executing a Mocha test. So I'm explicitly passing 60 seconds execution time for each test. So let me run these tests using this command. So npm run test colon mocha bs test, enter. Now this should start the execution and execute my mocha test in Browserstack. Now if you look carefully, there is no browser opened in my machine. So but still the execution is happening. My first test passed. I got the title of the web page as Google. My second test is also executed and passed. I got title of Orange HRM website. And third test is in progress. Yep, we got title of Amazon website as well. Now all these 3 tests passed. Now let's go back to Browserstack website and then see our test results there. Let me open my browser, search for Browserstack. Go to Browserstack website, go to products, click on automate, click on sign in. So once I sign in, I'll by default land on this dashboard. Let me click on my build. So this is where I see all the previous executions that happen. So last 3 executions are this. If you look at it, they happened 2 minutes ago, a minute ago, and a minute ago. So these are the 3 test executions that happen, and these are the results for this test. So the last test, so it started browser, opened Amazon.in, got the title, and printed the title. So that's it. Even the video recording is available for a future reference and debugging. Now, if you look at these tests, right, or even this test, so it has done the same thing, opened orangehrm.com, printed the title and stopped the session. The first test, it opened Google, printed the title, and stopped the execution. Now, if you look at all these 3 tests, the status of these 3 tests is unmarked. So it is not marked as either passed or failed. Now let's see how to mark this test case as passed or failed based on the execution result. Let's scroll to the top and go to the documentation. Click on run sample build. Now if you go to this section where they have provided some code for our first sample build. Now here you can see a couple of statements. It says driver.execute script, browser stack executor, action, set session status, arguments, status passed, and then the reason. You provide some message. Similarly, if something failed, you will set the status as failed and add the reason. We will use these 2 lines of code for setting the status of a test case as passed or failed in Browserstack. Let's go back to our code and add this particular line before quitting the browser. Let me do wrap text. Yeah. And then copy the same line, paste it before I quit the browser because I'm using driver.execute script, and before I need to use it before quitting the browser itself, because when I run this statement after quitting the browser, it will throw me an error. So we have added this line in all these 3 tests. Now let's run our code again, and we will verify the status of these tests in Browserstack. Now the execution started. So we can monitor the test runs in parallel. I've opened it. So this is executed a few seconds ago. And if you look at the status of this test case, it is marked as passed. Now REST API pass, and the test is marked as passed. Similarly, the second test case, even this test case is marked as passed. And the third one is also marked as passed. Now these are the 3 tests that we have executed now. Now if you look at the other tests that we have executed just before this execution, now all these 3 tests are not marked as passed. The status of these tests are marked as unmarked. This is how you update status of a test in Browserstack. Similarly, you can mark a test as failed as well. Let me update this status to failed. Let me run this test again. So the first 2 test cases should be marked as passed, and third one should be marked as failed. Let's see that in the report. The first test case execution started. So it is marked as pass. Or the second test case execution started. It is marked as passed again once the execution is done. Now the third test case execution started. Now it should be marked as failed because we are passing the argument as failed in the code. So if you look at it, the test case is marked as failed. This is how you update the status of a test case as passed or failed in Browserstack. Now it's hard to add these lines everywhere in our code, right? So to simplify things, let me create an utils file, utils.js, and in this file, let me create two methods: async function log success, which takes message, and then let me copy this code and paste it here. Now instead of hard coding the message, I'll pass it from the arguments. Now similarly, let's create one more method for log failure. So here I'll update it as failed. Now I've created these two methods. Now I need to export these two methods. Module dot export. I'll export log success and log failure. Now there is a catch here. Now we don't have driver instance available in this file. So what we'll do is let's create a driver object here and export this as well, and we will use this driver object. Now whenever we are calling these methods, before calling them from our mocha file, in the before each itself, what we will do is first let's import it, and then I'll explain you. Utils equal to require :/utils. Now in the before each method, what I'll do is I will add one line saying utils.driver equal to driver. Now once this is done, right, I don't need this huge lines anymore. Let me remove them. Now instead of adding all those lines, I'll simply call utils.log success. I'll log a message. Title drive from Google website. Let me copy it in the second test as well. Orange HRM, and then instead of logging success for the third test, let me log failure. Log failure title is not retrieved from Amazon website. Now let's start running these tests again, and we'll verify whether the changes that we have done are working properly or not. The first test execution is completed. We can go back here and then see the results. It is marked as passed. So title is retried from Google website. We are getting the log properly. So even for the second test title, we are seeing the log. I mean, we are seeing the status as passed. Title is retried from Orange HRM website. Third test case is marked as failed, and we are seeing the log as well. Title is not retried from Amazon website. Good. Now let's modify it a little more. let's move all the quitting statements or closing statements to after each. Let me create an async function. I'll first call the quit method here. Now there is one more catch here, which is let me throw an exception here. Throw error unexpected error. If this unexpected error occur, all the lines of code that are after this error won't be executed. Just like this, if you look at it, right, it is grayed out. Now in this case, right, the status of the test case won't be updated to our test. Let's check this as well. Let's run our test. First test case started and finished. Second test case is started. We can see it here, the status of each test. Second test case is also finished. Now third test case is started. So even though the test failed with some error, right? Here the failed status is not updated and it is not showing us anything. It is just saying that status is unmarked. Now, how to handle this situation? Let's go back to our code. This is where in after each block, we will add a few more statements. First, let's get the status of the test. Now, how can we get it? So this dot current, current test dot status state, sorry, stat state. Now, if this dot current test dot state, so if this is equal to failed, so whenever an exception occurs in your test case, right, the test case will be marked as failed by mocha. Now we can get that failure state here using this line. So whenever this state returns fail, right, now then we will log a failure. So what we'll add is utils dot log failure. We'll say test case colon less. We will get the title of this test. How to get it? This dot current test dot title, and then we will add a message saying failed. Now similarly, if a test case is passed and if we don't have any passed logs present in the test case, right? So based on the status of the test case in the after each, we will mark the test case as passed in the browser stack. Log success test case name will say passed. Now let's rerun our test and then see what will be the result in Browserstack. The first test case execution is started and it is marked as passed. Second test case execution is started and it is still running. So if you look at the log in the first test case, right, we have two logs now. So first log is title is retried from Google website, which we have added in the test case in the block. In the after each block, right, we are logging this test case Google test passed. Now, similarly, in the second test case, we'll get two log messages. First one is title is retried from Orange HRM website, which we logged in it block, and the second log is test case Orange HRM test passed, which is coming from after each. Now, if you look at the third test case, right, even though the test failed before logging the message, so we are still marking this test as failed using the code present in the after each block. And if you look at this test case Amazon test failed, this is coming from after each. Now let's go back to our code, modify a few more things. Let me comment out these lines. Now, even if there is no log statement that is saying the status of this test, that it is passed or failed, but in after each, right, we are logging based on the status of the test case, right? Either passed or failed, we are logging the success or failure message. Now let me comment out this one as well. So in Browserstack, for the first test case and second test case, we need to see the status as passed, and for the third test case, we need to see the status as failed. Now, how are we marking it as passed or failed? So based on the code present in the if block, these two lines. So if the status of the test case is failed, so we are logging the failure. If the status of the test case is passed, we are logging the success message. Let me run it. Let's go back to Browserstack. So the first test case is marked as passed. Now the log that we are seeing is coming from after each block, not from the it block. So similarly, second test case is passed. And even here, the log message is coming from the after each block. Third test case is marked as failed. And the log message is coming from after each block. This is how you integrate your Mocha test cases to Browserstack. I hope this section is helpful. Thanks for watching.